Hello and welcome back to the Pomegranate Girl. My name is Annie and I am a knitter and sewer and overall crafter based in Bristol in the southwest of the UK. Welcome back to episode 4. I have taken a bit of a break, but not a very long one, just for Christmas. So it's now the 8th, I believe, of January. So we're in the new year, we're in 2022. So let's hope that it all treats us a bit more kindly than the past few years have. I hope you're all safe and well and doing okay, and you had a lovely festive period if you celebrate Christmas. I hope you had a lovely Christmas. If you celebrate something else or nothing at all, then I hope you had some nice restful time off over the winter holiday season. So yeah, I am wearing my Orchards dress, which is a sewing pattern by a designer it's Vivian Shao, Chen, I think. I will have it written properly down below, but I've talked about this quite a few times on the episode. I may look like I'm really cold. I'm not for some reason. I wouldn't usually be wearing this in January. Definitely not outside. It's a sleeveless, long midi, nearly maxi length dress, and this is a cotton and linen mix from a UK fabric shop called Sew Me Sunshine, which is really lovely, and I was saving for something and I love this dress pattern. I've got plans to make another one with sleeves because I don't really like sleeveless things, although I do quite like being able to show my tattoo sometimes, so I've got one here as well as a few others, which don't normally make an appearance in the winter. And today I'm drinking out my favourite mug. I don't know if I've ever mentioned on here, I love Pride and Prejudice. I love Jane Austen in general. I did English as my undergraduate degree, so and it was mostly on 18th and 19th century literature, so I have a real passion for that area, although now I tend to not read a lot from that era, simply because I still think I'm too close to my degree to enjoy it and it not feel like work. But yeah, long ramble. I'm not in practice, but yeah, I have got a spiced cordial, winterberry cordial in here. So yeah, let us get into things. I'm really sorry if the lighting's bad. I'm filming this on a Saturday lunchtime because I thought maybe the light would be better, and it just isn't great. I actually live in a basement. I live in a house and I'm in the basement room. It's quite a tall, thin house, and we do have a garden, thankfully, but it's quite small, and it's got a wall at the back that is the back of our neighbours to the back's garden, if that makes sense, and it does pretty much come up to the ceiling of my room, so I'm never gonna get great light in here, and this is where I want to film. So yeah, maybe at some point, if I if I'm still doing this in a few years, I'll probably won't be living in this house anymore. So yeah, anyway, massive ramble. Let's get on to finished objects. So I have two that I have finished that I can't show you because I don't have them with me. And the first, you probably would know, it's one of my long-term whips, and it is the Talvinen by Caitlin Hunter. I'll insert a picture here of the original designer's image, but I'll also then insert some photos of my own. And I made this as a Christmas gift for my mum. And yeah, I've spoken a lot about it on the channel or on the podcast previously. I knit this out of Buches, Le Petit Lambswool, which is a really lovely 100% wool, I believe it's Scottish Lambswool, and yeah, spun in Scotland, I think. And Le Biches are a French company, or they're based in France. I think the owners might be from somewhere else in Europe, but I could be wrong. And yeah, it's a lovely yarn. I hadn't used it before, but it was a suggested yarn for this pattern. It's not, I wouldn't say super affordable, but it isn't, I think, a really, really large amount. It's not, you know, I think it's maybe 11 to 14 pound for a 15-gram skein, a 50-gram skein even. So for me, that's kind of like mid to higher range yarn, but it is so lovely if you can work with it in any way. I'd really recommend it. It's quite tasty, but it's, I don't know, my mum, she isn't super sensitive to wool, but she couldn't probably wear let lopey like direct to skin like I can. I really don't get sensitive to wool. I'm quite lucky, but yeah, my mum wouldn't be able to wear something like that close to her skin, but I think she finds it fine. She said she would wear something under it, but it doesn't bother her around the neck or anything, or like on her maybe like hands or wrists. I was struggling to remember the word then. So yeah, she really loves it. I made a size, so I wanted to knit a size 4. I probably would have knit her a size 3, but she wanted the extra ease, kind of in the bust area. She likes things to be oversized, and especially like have slightly more of a bat wing style between like her arms and like her chest. So I wanted to knit her a size 4 based on what she wanted, and my gauge with Caitlin Hunter's patterns is always off. I think I am quite a tight knitter. If anything, I usually do have to size up a needle, but I really have always struggled with her patterns to get the gauge that she lists. So I knitted a size 6 in order to get a size 4, or just under a size 4, I think by a few centimetres, which was fine. So that worked out well. I was a bit worried because it's my first time doing that, and like working out what my gauge was and doing the maths has never been my strong point, so doing all of that was a bit daunting. But now that I know how to do it, and I know that that calculation works for me, then that's great. So I can do that going forward with her patterns or other patterns that I might want to knit. So yeah, it was lovely to knit. It did take me about 5 months on and off to knit, and doing the tubular cast off on bind off, sorry, on the body. I did it in stages. I was like, this is going to take me ages, and I did it like a few hours every day. I'm really slow. I'm quite a slow knitter anyway, and I'm quite slow at doing the like tubular bind off. So yeah, but she really loved it. I actually put a few photos of a bit that we took over Christmas when I went back home to see her and my aunt, and she loved it. And I'm just so happy because I wasn't sure if she'd like the fit of it. Obviously jumpers are or like any clothing is very personal, so what I like is not really what she likes, so I was just so worried. But yeah, she really liked it, and she's been wearing it a lot since, which was really lovely. I think she's such a knit-worthy person, and she chose the colours as well. So, you know, because I knew it was going to be such a long-term project and it was going to be a lot of work, so I really wanted her to be happy with it, and she kind of agreed on the pattern. So yeah, it was kind of a bit collaborative with her, and yeah, I'm just so glad it's finished and that she enjoys it. And yeah, she's been getting a lot of wear out of it, which I'm so glad about. But yeah, so it made me really happy to be able to give it to her, because it was definitely a lot of work. And yeah, I don't know if I'll be knitting a fingering weight sweater for someone else anytime soon. I just want a bit of selfish knitting time. So yeah, that was my first gift. It's now in its new home. My second gift was a hat that I knit for my aunt, and I knit the Fither hat by Claire Walls, I believe. Yeah, Claire Walls, who is Flossie Knits. She also has her own podcast, so I'll leave that linked down below. And I knit this out of Bear in Sheep's Clothing, Bear Masham, I believe it was, or Masham. I still don't know how to pronounce that. Which is a BFL Masham blend. I think it's 75% Blueface Leicester and 25% mid-brown Masham, and I knit it in the colourway Evergreen or Coniferous. Coniferous it was, Sorry, I've given her the ball band so that she can know the shade, because my aunt also knits, and she actually wanted to knit herself like a matching scarf or shawl to go with the hat, which I thought was really nice, or maybe like some other accessory. So yeah, I gave her the ball band so that she'd know exactly what brand it was, and I'll like send her the link and stuff, so that she could get the matching shades. Obviously with dye lots it might be a little bit different, but yeah, so I knit her the Fither hat. I knit this size medium, which obviously I won't say what number of stitches that was, even if I could remember. And yeah, she really liked it. Again, this was something we kind of not designed collaboratively, but we chose. She said what colour she wanted, and like that she wanted a cabled hat, so I sent her a few different patterns, and this is the one she chose. Because my aunt can knit, it's, you know, I want things to be right. I don't want to just give her anything that, you know, and she's like a really talented seamstress and knitter herself, so it's always a bit of pressure giving someone a handmade gift, I think, if they are like, she's so talented that I always get a bit worried that mine's not going to be good enough, because I'm nowhere near as neat as she is, especially with sewing. So yeah, I gave that to her. She really liked it. I will have inserted some pictures already, but I really enjoyed this pattern. The twist, it starts off with like a twisted rib brim, and that did take me forever. It was the first time I think that I'd done fully twisted ribs, so with knitting and purling through the back loop, and purling through the back loop is a pain, but I definitely got quicker, and it was good to try something new. And thankfully, I was a bit worried because my aunt wanted a pom-pom on top, and I was like, oh, will I have enough yarn? Will I need to order another skein? So I'm definitely cutting it a bit close, but yeah, I've still got a bit left, so that's perfect. So yeah, if like she wants any for like repairs or anything in the future, I've got that. So yeah, those were my gift knits. Let's move on to things that I have physically with me, and they are both pairs of socks. So the first one is something that I actually finished ages ago, but it was a test knit and I didn't want to show it on the podcast before the pattern had been released. And it is the Tinsel tree socks by Danielle. I believe you pronounce it Jorge, who is Little Bobbins on Instagram and Ravelry. I've knit quite a few of her sock patterns before. I think she's so talented and I really love her designs. So this was her Christmas Eve cast on sock pattern. So I tested this in, I think I started in maybe in late October, and I finished maybe mid-November, late November. So managed to just about finish it within the deadline, slightly over, but I'd had finished one sock. And yeah, this is what they look like. I have worn these and washed these since, so probably won't show you them too closely. But they are these really sweet, just they're pretty simple, like with a plain vanilla foot, but on the kind of ankle section you have these like little trees that are done with cable stitches and bobbles, and this uses scrap yarn. So I think this one was a Vivian's colour. This was a River Knits, like no nylon, no non-superwash sock yarn that I have. And then this was leftovers from a John Arbon Exmoor sock yarn that I knit a pair of socks for one of my best friends last year. So yeah, leftovers, or it literally uses like 1 or 2 grams, I'd say, of each little varying colour, so you can use scraps. And then the main body of the sock I did in Jawoll, which is a Superwash 75-25, so 75 wool, I don't know if it's merino, and 25% nylon, which I don't normally use, purely because I don't really love how it feels on my feet. But I wanted to try this because I saw it on Ophelia from Orchid's Heart, her channel, I think originally, and she uses it quite a lot, and it comes with a reinforcement thread. So the spool of reinforcement thread is like tucked inside the main like ball of yarn, and as you can see, you kind of hold it together for the heels and the toes, or any other places where you might have wear, like on, I don't know, like say the bottom of the foot, like on where the balls of your feet would be. I didn't do that, I just did it on the heels and toes, so I just included it on my slip stitched heel. And yeah, I really like it. I was just really curious to see how that would wear. And this yarn is really affordable. I think it's £5, around £5 for a 50-gram skein. So you could definitely get a pair of socks for under £10, which with the, I really loved the kind of not instruction, the kind of the basically the fact that it had the reinforcement thread inside. I thought that was really lovely, and just something I wanted to try. As I said earlier, I don't tend to use these kind of traditional sock yarns just because I don't love how they feel. It's kind of the same for this one. I prefer like my 100% wool socks, just on how they feel on my feet, I think. But and I don't particularly have massive issues with felting, and to be honest, I mean, they do felt, but I don't mind that. So yeah, for me it's like not I haven't really had many issues with my non-superwash non-nylon socks, so I don't particularly feel like I need the nylon in there. And I hand wash all my knits anyway, because I'm very lucky and have the time to do that. So yeah, but this is still really nice to work with, and it was nice to try it, but I don't know if I'll be using it again. Maybe at some point. I imagine it'd be really good for gifts. I never would knit socks with 100% wool for probably many people in my life, just because I know that people are busy and don't want to hand wash or like be super careful with their socks. Like, I just want people to be able to enjoy them, so it would be good for gift knitting for me. So maybe that's why I'd use it again, because it was really affordable, and that reinforcement thread idea was really cool. So yeah, really enjoyed test knitting for Danny. It was my first test knit and she did such a great job. She's so lovely and I really love her designs. I've got a few in my queue actually on Ravelry. And yeah, and I think the shade of this, by the way, was like a cream or like off-white colour. I can't remember the exact name. I think it actually might be shade numbers. But yeah, so that's my third finished object that have been finished for a while, hence why I've worn them. But yeah, I didn't want to show them until the release date was out, until they were published, sorry. And then my second kind of finished object that I've got here with me is these look awful on the sock blockers, I'm so sorry. These are my DRK Everyday Socks, which is a pattern by Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and they are a toe up 2x2 rib sock. So it was my first time doing toe up socks and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the fact that I could like manage how much yarn I had, so I could just knit the kind of length of the foot to whatever I wanted, and these are quite long. I don't know if I'll knit socks this long again, just because then it gets to like the top, like properly where my calves start, and they're a bit, I kind of need to make them more slouchy because they don't fit. So I either need to knit them a bit shorter or do some like increases if I'm going to make them this long again. But this is Woolly Mammoth Fibre Company's natural sock 4-ply in the colourway Hibernation. I speak about Emma's yarn all the time because I love it. I love her sock yarn. All my favourite socks are knit, pretty much all my favourite socks are knit out of her yarn. I just love how it feels. It's a 50% BFL, 50% Cheviot, and she naturally dyes things in Northern Ireland. But yeah, these were so fun to knit. They were really good, like work with when I was still going into the office, which I'm not currently doing due to COVID. But yeah, when I was going into the office or travelling, these were great, and they were just good for like if I was like watching a film or like spending doing something with friends where I felt like it was okay to knit, but obviously wanted something really easy. These were great, and yeah, I haven't worn them yet, so I'm really excited to give them a go. The other thing that I will mention is that I knitted these slightly longer than what I usually would, which is why you can see this like weird excess on the foot, because these sock blockers are a medium, which is like a EU 39, which is like a UK 6. I'm actually like a 6.5/7, but yeah, these sock blockers usually work great, but these I probably need some slightly bigger ones, just because I now have decided that I'm going to knit every like socks that I knit with like non-superwash no nylon yarn, I'm going to knit slightly longer in the foot, and that is on the advice of Emma from Woolly Mammoth Fibre Company. I was reading her, I think it was actually quite an old blog post about no nylon socks, and she said that because of the felting, she liked to knit for an extra 1 or 2 centimetres on the foot, so that when the socks did felt, they still fitted your feet like lengthways, because otherwise your like heel gusset would like, or like by your heel turn, that would slip slightly forward with the felting, and it would like shrink in. So yeah, I thought I'd try that, see if it makes a difference, because that is something actually I have noticed when my socks do felt, I do lose that like length on the foot, and the heel does come like forward slightly on the underside of my foot. So yeah, these are lovely. I'm so excited to wear them. I think they'll be so like warm and cozy. They look pretty funny when they're not on a sock blocker, and I've still got some of the yarn left just for like repairs in case I need it in the future, but yeah, it's lovely. It's this like really gorgeous lilac with like yellow speckles in it, and yeah, it's just really nice. And my cast off at the top is a bit dodged, because I think I was doing it on the train coming home from my dad's after Christmas, so I probably wasn't really concentrating. I'm still not great at doing is it Jenny's super stretchy bind off, so we'll just ignore that, but it's fine, it works. It just doesn't look super tidy. So yeah, they are all my finished objects. Let's move on to whips, but I'm gonna have a drink first. Oh, I'm not used to doing all this talking. Yeah, so let's move on to works in progress. And after casting off my mum's Talvinen, which I managed to finish about a week and a bit before Christmas, so I had enough time to like wash and block it and for it to dry, because getting things to dry, one in this house in particular, I live in quite an old house, and just generally in the UK in the winter time, unless you've got your heating on like full blast, takes, and we don't, takes a while. So it actually dried really quickly, I think because it's quite fine yarn, and I did slightly use my hairdryer on on the cool setting, like literally for like a minute, just to make sure it was completely dry before I wrapped it up. I might get told off for that, I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I was super careful. Yeah, I just wanted some like extra, it wasn't hot, it was literally on the cold setting, but yeah, someone tell me if that's wrong, because I did feel like it was slightly wrong when I was doing it, but I was really careful. So yeah, once I cast off that, I just wanted to finish off some other projects on my needles, hence the DRK everyday socks, and I really just wanted some quick knits for myself. So I cast on the Holiday Slipover by Petite Knit, which is a very popular pattern, and it's as the name suggests, a slipover, and I've had the yarn for it for ages, but I was kind of just waiting to finish my mum's Talvinen, to be honest, before I cast it on, and this is what I've got so far. So try and show it to you without covering my mouth. Yeah, it's a knitted vest. The construction's really interesting. It's partially knit, you knit the back like flat, and then you pick up for the shoulders and knit the front, and then you join in the round, and then you pick up and knit the collar and this like armhole ribbing, and then you create a split hem, and you knit the back, and then you knit the front. So as you can see, I have pretty much finished this, which is, yeah, it's been really quick. I cast this on like less than a week ago, and I have only got one armhole to pick up and knit the ribbing on, and then I've done the back ribbing, and now I just need to do the front ribbing. As you can see, and this is something I'm less keen on and I was really worried about when I knit it, my gauge between like knitting flat and knitting in the round is slightly, like when I'm knitting flat I think it's not as neat as when I'm knitting in the round, but I think with the block, like the gauge isn't massively different, so I just don't think my purling is as neat. So when I block it, I'm just hoping that will all even out, and I think it will. And also, I never struggle to pick up stitches on, like when I'm doing like a sock, but for some reason when it's on, I found doing the neckband is so daunting, and I think I've done an okay job. I don't think it's great, but I really didn't know. I watched quite a few videos and I didn't really know how to do it like really neatly. I am also slightly impatient, so sometimes I think, oh, I'll just do it and it will look fine. But yeah, I did try picking up the stitches with the collar fairly soon, and I tried it a few times and I wasn't quite sure. Sorry, I'm now like looking at the jumper. I do try to look at the camera. Doesn't always work, I think, because I'm filming on my phone. I do sometimes get comments about that, so sorry. I do try. I'm just still getting all used to this kind of thing. So yeah, I'm still really happy with it though. And then I did the ribbing on this arm last night, and yeah, so I've just got that to go, and I'm really enjoying knitting this. I was really worried at first if it would suit me, because to be honest, I'd only seen it on people who were a smaller size than me, who had like a smaller chest circumference, and I do sometimes worry that some things won't look, obviously it won't look the same because my body type is different. So I made a point of going through the hashtag and actively looking for people that had my body shape, and kind of how they'd worn it and what it looked like, and I still loved it, and thought, yeah, that will be something I want to wear and will wear, and I just think it'll be a really nice extra layer. So I should probably tell you what yarn I'm using for this. So I am keeping this in one of my lovely Christmas present from my mum, and it is this blue rabbit house bag. I love these bags. I've loved them for ages, but I can never quite, I'm not saying they're not worth the cost at all, because they 100% are. She does the illustrations, she prints them and sews them, so they're totally worth it. It has just always been a bit out of my budget, to be honest, for a project bag, seeing as I've always felt like, oh, I can sew one, I just don't want to. And I love her illustrations so much. They're just so gorgeous and really whimsical. So yeah, this was a Christmas present for my mum, and yeah, I absolutely love it. I think it's beautiful, and this is the sweater size, which I specifically asked for because I only really have one other project bag that fits that much yarn in it, which is one I made last year myself, and I really like it, but I just needed more, or like some more tote bags, but I do love these. So yeah, thank you, Mum, if you're watching. She knows that I'm grateful for it, obviously. So I am knitting this out of one of the recommended yarns, and it is CaMaRose Snefug. This is the ball band, and it is 55% alpaca, 35%, oh gosh, this is in a Scandinavian language that I'm not quite sure, maybe Danish, bomull, which is that cotton? No, it can't be. I'll leave it down below if I remember. yeah, it's a Danish company, I believe, because their website is .dk. And then extra fine merino. It's so soft, like beautifully soft, and the colour is Beige, which is 7314. This is kind of what it looks like in the ball band. So this is, I've got 1 skein left. So far I bought 7 skeins of this, and I'm knitting the size 4 or 5, I think. Yeah, I think I'm knitting the 5 because it's, yeah, an XL, I believe. And I'm knitting this on the recommended needle sizes, which is 10mm for the body and 9 for the ribbing. My first time in a really long time using the needles that chunky. And I have to say, I don't love them. I've got some Chao ones, but it's just the fact that the cord is that, the join kind of, I'll show you. So obviously the cord is pretty thin, and then even this is the 9mm, can you see that? Is the join just isn't, I feel like I have to keep pushing them onto the needle, which obviously when you've got a thinner needle that doesn't happen. But I love Chao-Gu's. I like buy them as I need them, which is probably less cost effective in the long run, but it's just how I've had to do it basically. I couldn't afford to like buy them all at once. Well, I maybe could have, but I'd have had to have saved, which I'm not great at. So yeah, these are, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, the Chao-Gu's, I don't love that. That's why I don't really like working on them, and I just prefer working on like a 4 or a 5mm needle or smaller. I just find it a bit easier, but maybe that's just because I'm not used to working on such big needles. So yeah, I am holding 2 strands of this double as the pattern recommends, and I am holding it with this from Sandnes Garn, which is a Tinsel mohair, and this, let me find the ball band. This is a really lovely yarn. I bought mine from one of my local yarn shops, which is No Frills Knitting in Bristol. She's based in Bedminster, for any of my fellow Bristolians on here. And yeah, so I bought this from her, and it only actually requires 2 skeins, because at first I wasn't going to include the mohair because I got Gauge without the mohair, and then I thought, oh, actually it only needs 2 25-gram skeins. That's fine, I'll do that. I can afford that. And yeah, this is really nice. I slightly prefer the knitting for Olive. I think it's a bit softer, but this is still really lovely, and I think it's such a nice inclusion. And yeah, this is the Tinsel mohair by Sandnes Garn in the colour 1015, and it's 57% mohair, 28% silk, 15% wool. So maybe it's the inclusion of the wool that gives it, it's not quite as like soft, I'd say, or like silky, maybe. Don't know, it just feels slightly different to the knitting for Olive. Is it their silk merino? But it's still lovely. I really love this. I have used it before in a hat that I knit. I think I mentioned in my first episode I knit for my best friend for her, one of my best friends for her birthday. So I have used it before, and but yeah, it's really nice. Still lovely and soft, and the fabric as a whole that this is creating is so soft. I love it. I think it's so cozy. I'm slightly worried about it pilling, and really I shouldn't have chosen cream because I'm quite a messy person. I'm quite clumsy, so I'm not great with, I don't know, I just feel like I could very easily like spill tomato sauce, or like when I'm cooking. I just need to be careful, and that doesn't stop me from knitting with white. I've just realised I need to be more careful. But yeah, I'm really enjoying knitting this, and I'm hoping to finish it maybe this weekend. It's like midday on Saturday now, although I've got plans this evening, so maybe not. But yeah, I'm really enjoying knitting it, and I'm just so excited to be able to style it. I was a bit worried that it was maybe a bit too cool for me, and didn't quite fit in with my wardrobe, but actually once I tried it on, I was like, yeah, I can definitely style this in lots of different ways and get loads of use out of it. And I think it will be really nice, like as a transitional piece going between summer and autumn, and winter and like spring and summer. So yeah, really excited to finish that. The second, what should I talk about next? Yeah, let's talk about this one. So the second whip I have is, I don't think I had cast on in my last episode, but they are the Persephone mittens by Emily Foden, which is from this lovely book, which is called Knits About Winter. This is published by Pom Pom Press a few years ago now. I think I might have mentioned actually in the first episode about these, because I bought the yarn for them, and maybe mentioned that in my acquisitions section. So yeah, this is the mittens. They are so beautiful. They're really quite simple, but they've got this beautiful lace on them. So yeah, and this book as a whole is lovely. I would highly recommend it. I mean, I've obviously only knit the mittens from it, but I have plans to knit the soiree jumper, and I just would quite like to knit everything in this book, to be honest. I think it's beautiful. So I cast on the first mitten just before Christmas, and they are super quick to knit up. So I have finished the first one, and this is what it looks like. I am making the smallest size, which is a size 1, and I have also sized down. No, yeah, I have actually sized down, because I was knitting on, so the pattern says 2.75 millimeter needles, and actually that came out way too big, and I was also knitting the second size up, so I thought actually I'll size down to a 2.5 and knit the smaller size, and they fit great. It feels a bit weird putting on a mitten when you're wearing a sleeveless dress, but yeah, they fit perfectly. I'm so happy with them. So yeah, they've got this beautiful like slight lace detailing here, which runs along both sides, and then they have this like lovely moss stitch, or I think in the US and Canada it's called seed stitch, texture going from like here to here. They've got a picot edge, so that was my first time doing a picot edge, which I really like. It's quite subtle, and yeah, they're just really lovely. So yeah, I finished one, and I have started the second one, although I have to admit some of my other projects have taken over slightly. So yeah, I've made the right mitten, and now I'm on to the second. Yeah, so I've just started doing the thumb increases along the gusset, which will be here, and I am knitting these out of, I think the original is all of the designs in that book are knit from Emily's own yarn, Viola Yarns, and the Persephone mittens were originally designed to be knit in her Romney sheet base, which is like a super local to her base. I'm not sure if it was like a limited edition or she still carries it. So I thought I would try and knit them with Romney as well, because I don't think I'd knit with any single flock Romney before. I could be wrong. So I am knitting them with Pentland by Gardener, which is organic Romney Lambswool from Wiltshire, which is pretty near to where I live, so it feels super local. Yeah, 100% single flock organic Romney Lambswool. I really love Gardener. This is my first experience with using them, but I'd definitely be trying more of their yarn. I really love their ethos and the work that they do, and they're based in the UK. And actually they're based in Wales, which feels extra special because I'm half Welsh, if you didn't know. So this is a 4-ply and the shade is Tynn. I could have knit them in another colour, but I actually just really liked the original sample that was knit in like a similar grey, so I just kind of wanted to stick with that, and I thought grey goes with everything. And my like main winter coat I bought secondhand a few years ago in a vintage shop, and that is like a dark grey wool, so I thought these would go quite well. And yeah, they're just really lovely. I just haven't made much progress on them recently, which is bad because it's been so cold here. I mean, probably not in comparison to other countries in Europe, or like across the world, but it got down to around 2 degrees, like during the day, especially when I was back home in Bath, because my mum lives slightly more rurally than I do. I obviously live right in the city, so the temperatures kind of do vary. So yeah, I should have really finished them before that, but I do have some gloves that I can still wear. They just don't quite fit me very well. So yeah, really enjoying knitting those. Hopefully by next time they'll be a finished object and I'll be able to get somewhere out of them before it gets too warm. Yeah, won't delve into that and climate change. So yeah, that is my second whip, and I have 2 more to show you. I realise this episode's been very long, so I'm sorry because we've still got a bit more to go through. So my next whip is a pair of socks, and this is a yarn by Stripy Cat Yarns, who you've probably seen quite a lot of people talking about. I actually first heard of them through, I think, Rebecca from the Creabea podcast, who I've mentioned before. I love her podcast, she's lovely, and she knits so quickly. I wish I had her knitting speed, honestly. And I've also seen Ophelia from Orchard's Heart. I've seen Kat from the Heather and Hops podcast. I was literally watching her this morning. I can't believe I blanked on that. Yeah, so this is Stripy Cat Yarns, and this was her Christmas Eve cast on sock set, and this is on her new non-superwash, no nylon base, which is a 100% British Corriedale, which again don't think I'd ever knitted from. When I've knit socks, I mean a lot of my socks are knit out of Woolly Mammoth, which is that 50 BFL, 50 Cheviot, and other things I've knit with have been like Superwash Merino and nylon, or just BFL, so I haven't knit with a lot of other bases. So this is so lovely. It is so soft, and this is a self-striping yarn, and there were 2 kind of surprise themes. So one was, I think, like Hogwarts in the snow, and then this one was cozy cabin or Christmas at the cabin, something with cabin in it. And there were 2 photos, and then the skein just arrived, and it was supposed to be for a Christmas Eve cast on. I was away over Christmas, I was back home, so I actually cast these on after Christmas, and yeah, they're lovely. So as you can see, I am up to the heel flap. So what you got was a 100-gram skein of this. This is the self-striping. I do normally use my Swift and ball winder, but my ball winder was really acting up. I don't know if I was just not in the right I don't know if I'd like done something wrong, but it was really acting up. So like halfway through I just started winding it into a ball instead, still using my Swift, because it was, yeah, I was not we weren't cooperating that day. So yeah, this is beautiful. It feels quite silky almost. It just feels very soft. So yeah, I'm so excited to see how this wears and like, yeah, work with it more. I love knitting with it. It's just really lovely base. Yeah, so super excited to see how it wears and have it on my feet. And I am knitting these on a 2.25. I'm just doing like my really basic vanilla socks. So I've done a 2x2 ribbed cuff. Don't know how long. I think I measured for until it got to about 17 centimeters for the leg. And then yeah, I've just started doing the heel flap and gusset with slip stitches, and then the garter edge, which I originally saw on, I believe, I don't know if she like started it or but I originally saw the concept on the Gentle Knitters podcast, lovely Nicole, and it makes it really easy to pick up the stitches, and I actually just quite like how it looks. So yeah, I haven't worked on these in a few days, but they're really nice. I I wasn't sure at first about the colours. They're not really, I don't usually love blue. I have to say it's not something I wear very, I mean there are actually quite a few blue things in my wardrobe, but it's not something I tend to gravitate towards. And I wasn't sure about the yellow, but actually the more I've been knitting on it, the more I've enjoyed the colours. They're quite, I think I showed this to my boyfriend, he was like, oh, it's quite 70s. I think that's also just like the thick and the thin stripes. So yeah, really enjoying these, and yeah, just super excited to see how they wear. And yeah, hoping to get back to them, and I am storing them in my lovely bag from Harriet at Wildwood Stitches. I've talked about this loads, but I love her bags. And yeah, I just love the Paris tweed on the bottom. It just makes me really happy. So yeah, that's my third whip, and I've got one final whip which I actually started yesterday. So yesterday I had my 1 year work appraisal at my job, and it wasn't really anything to be nervous about, to be honest, but I get quite nervous for those kind of things. I think as probably many people do, but yeah, went fine, it's all good. Yeah, I don't want to bore anyone about my work, so I won't, but I decided to treat myself to something I'd been really wanting to cast on all week, and it is the Snaranness, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is by Gudrun Johnston, and it is from her latest book, The Shetland Trader Heritage, which is volume 3 of her Shetland Trader books. And it is this, I'm not going to be able to show this very well, but it is a beautiful like kerchief, like kind of neckerchief / headscarf, and it is a triangle shape, and it's this beautiful lace. So I don't know if you can, I really need to hold this against like a paler background, but it's, should have thought this through. Maybe I'll insert some photos of the finished object so you can see, or like the finished, her original samples. But it's got this beautiful like almost flower design lace, and I love how these look on other people, specifically when they're like wrapped around the neck. There is a pattern by My Favourite Things Knitwear called I think it's scarf number 1. Her patterns are like, a lot of them are numbered, and it's, I just think it looks so cool, and I just really love how it looks. And I don't have one, and I thought maybe of like trying to find like a fabric one second hand, but I love how knitted ones look. So I thought I definitely want to knit the scarf number 1, but I am on a yarn buying ban and fabric buying ban for January, and I might extend it into February as well, just because I don't need any more yarn. I don't need to spend money on yarn when I've got so much, and I've already got fabric. You know, I just want to get through some projects before buying more yarn, especially after Christmas, you know, trying to be a bit more economical in the new year. So yeah, I thought I'd cast this on, and I bought this yarn before Christmas when I was buying yarn for another project that I'll talk about in my future plans section. And it's, so I should say what it is. It is, oh, I'm now not going to be able to find the ball band. Typical me, I've put it somewhere and now I won't be able to find it, but it is the Jameson & Smith's 2-ply jumper weight. Sorry, I was looking over at my desk to see if it was there. No, not 2-ply jumper weight, sorry, the 2-ply like lace. It's not the Supreme lace, it's their other one, and I think it's 50% lambswool, 50% Shetland wool. And yeah, it's a lace weight yarn, and this is the colour. Oh my gosh, it is so beautiful. So I didn't really know what colours to order. It's pretty affordable. I think it's around, it's like max £4, and you only need 1 skein for the entire project. So I wasn't really sure what colour to order, so I ordered this green, and then I ordered like a dark kind of burgundy red, because I was like, oh well, you know, I could knit 2, it would make a lovely, I thought my mum might like one, but then I showed it to her and she was like, oh, I wouldn't wear that. So maybe a gift for someone else, or I just make two for myself. And this green is beautiful. It's a green, it's not really showing up very well on camera, but it's a green with like all these beautiful like pinks in it as well. Oh, it's just so beautiful. I love it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying knitting this. I haven't knit a lot of lace before. This isn't super complicated lace. It's like a pattern, like motif that you repeat, but it's just so beautiful. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to finishing this. I started this yesterday, and I've been knitting on this and my holiday slipover. Kind of, I'm still trying to show you. It'll have to be in a photo, I think. But yeah, it's just beautiful, and I love all the patterns in Gudrun Johnston's latest book. I think they're all just so gorgeous. I'm a massive fan of 70s fashion and the 70s in general, and 70s music. It's like something that massively inspires me and how I dress myself. So to have a book with like some very 70s inspired patterns in it is really lovely. So yeah, let's move on to future plans. I was going to talk about my Make 9, but actually looking at the time, I think it's not worth it. But I have made a Make 9. I've done it as a combination of sewing and knitting. So I don't like to hold myself too strictly, but there are definitely projects that I'd like to make. It includes a skirt and some trousers, because I'm really missing some like good basics, like good separate basics in my wardrobe. I love making dresses, and I wear dresses a lot, but it'd be nice to have some separates. And yeah, so I won't talk too much about the Make 9, but I will mention some projects from it. So the first, or one of the things on my Make 9 is a cowl by Ella Gordon of Ella Gordon Designs, and this is totally inspired by Taylor E. Owen. I love her knitting podcast. I love her style. She has the Thread to Mend podcast on YouTube. I'll leave her link down below. And I saw her version of the Radiant Star Cowl by Ella Gordon. Ella is a Shetland knitwear designer, and I love her designs. I was introduced to her through Mary Jane Mucklestone, and yeah, I love Ella's work. So I saw this design that Taylor had knitted, and I loved the colourways. The original is absolutely beautiful, but it has blue in it. I'll insert a picture of the original sample here, and it has blue in it. And as I mentioned previously, I don't wear a lot of blue. I don't really, not that it doesn't suit me, but I love wearing greens. I love wearing like rusts and oranges and reds and neutrals. So blue is just not something I really wear very often. So I wanted to switch out the colours, and I saw Taylor's and I absolutely loved it. She actually this isn't a direct copy, mainly because she hadn't actually listed the colours she used, because I think she'd just used stuff from Stash. So I kind of just looked quite closely at hers and thought, because I'm still not very good with colour, that's something I really struggle with, both in my own work. A lot of what or not a lot, but part of my work involves design, like graphic design, although I'm not trained, so maybe that's why I'm not good at colour. So yeah, I really struggled with it in work, and I struggled with it in knitting as well. I'm not good at seeing what colours work together. I find it quite difficult, so a lot of the time I knit things, I suppose I'm not very creative with colour, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, this is very much inspired by Taylor, and Taylor, I doubt you're watching this, but if you are, I hope that's okay. And this is the swatch that I've made, and actually I think I'm pretty happy with these colours. I'll have them all listed down below, and this isn't something I'm going to cast on. I've got some gift knitting to do first, so I'm not going to be casting this on for a little bit, but hopefully maybe in February. I've got something else to knit first for a deadline, for a gift. I'm not going to say what it is or who it's for, but in case they're watching. But yeah, maybe after that's done I could cast this on, and I swatch in the round for anything that's in the round. which is kind of just like doing I-cord. You just like bring the yarn back, slip the stitches back to the other side of the needle. I'm not explaining it very well. And yeah, I really love these colours. So I ordered loads of Jameson and Smith, and like I did this swatch, and I also did another smaller swatch with, because I wasn't initially, I thought maybe that this red colour, which you can't massively see, you see it at the top, was too close to then this kind of dark salmon colour. So I did another smaller swatch, kept the shades of yellow the same, just changed out these like pink shades, but actually I don't like this as much, and actually I think this is pretty spot on. I think this is like bold enough, but yeah, so in the original obviously this is in blues, and it's still like it's blue and yellow, but I wanted to make it pink and yellow just because they're colours that I prefer. So yeah, I will be casting this on at some point, hopefully before summer takes hold and I get some chance to wear it. So yeah, that's one of my make 9 and one of my future plans. One of my other future plans is another very heavily inspired knit, and I was really inspired by Casey from the Young Folk Knits podcast and Ophelia from Orchid's Heart, who I've mentioned a few times already today, and they were both knitting red hats, and I love red. I really love the colour. I think it's such a lovely colour, and I really was like, oh, that would be so cool. And I have kind of one hat that I wear that's like a kind of dusky pink, like mauve colour, and I thought, oh, red would be really nice. I also saw Inga from Knitting Traditions knit one, so I decided that I wanted to join in with this like red hat trend. I've definitely seen other people talking about it as well, and I purchased some Shelter by Brooklyn Tweed, and this is the colourway Amaranth. This might even be the same shade that Ophelia used, so I'm so sorry, Ophelia, I hope this is okay. This is an American wool. It's American Taji Columbia, and it is, I believe they get it spun, wool sourced in Johnson County, WY, is that Wyoming? Could be pronouncing that wrong. It's spun in Harrisville, so same as the Harrisville designs, which I used recently to knit a hat for my boyfriend, which I spoke about in previous episodes. This definitely has that same feel, almost like the way it's spun must be very similar because it has that same feel to the yarn. Maybe because it's woolen spun, I don't know, or maybe it's the Columbia wool, and it dyed in Philadelphia, PA. Not sure what state that is, sorry. I'm really bad at American geography, so please correct me. So yeah, this is a beautiful like deep red colour, and I'm just gonna knit, I think, the Pearl Soho like basic ribbed hat pattern, which is like a 1x1 ribbed hat. Just something really simple, really like similar to my other hat that I had knit last year, which is the Taylor's Rib Beanie by Albina McLaughlin, I believe is how you pronounce it. But that hat is knit from like the top to the brim, and my tubular bind off was a bit tight, which is the one thing I don't love about that hat, so I think I'm going to knit it from the brim to the crown instead, because I prefer that method. That's the way I did my boyfriend's hat, and I think it worked really well. It's like got a stretchy enough brim. So yeah, I'm so excited to knit this. I'm just wanting to get some other projects off my needles, and yeah, I'm so excited to have a red hat. I was also inspired by there is a TV show based on some books called The Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, His Dark Materials, and in the TV show, the main character Lyra, in the first season, she's wearing a red hat. It's a very specific reference, and I saw an image of it actually the other day, and and because where she wears this hat a lot throughout the first season, I remember, and there's this, I just saw a photo of her wearing it, and they actually filmed some of it near where I grew up in South Wales, or at least it very much looks like a beach near where I grew up. And I was like, oh, that's this place. And then I was like, oh, she's wearing a red hat, it's a sign. So yeah, really excited to cast this on, maybe by the next episode. So I was going to talk about some sewing, but I won't talk about it for too long. But I am knitting, I am sewing, I have sewn even, the Merchant & Mills Ellis dress, and this was my Christmas dress. I wasn't sure if I was going to get it done in time, but actually I ended up taking my sewing machine back to my mum's. It's actually hers anyway, so I was really taking it back for her. And I sewed it out of some linen and viscose, a mix from Stuff and Still. It was pretty affordable. I'll leave it linked down below because I'm pretty sure it's part of their core range, so they'll still have it. And yeah, it's beautiful. I'll insert a photo here. I think the one thing with Merchant & Mills which I don't love is that they're still expanding their size range. So I made a size 18, which I don't know if the Ellis pattern if they've updated it to do it in their second size range. I'll leave the information linked down below. So yeah, some of their patterns do have limited sizing, which I do try to avoid. Obviously I'm not perfect, I don't always manage it. So I sewed the size 18, which was what my measurements put me in. That's what I usually am in Merchant & Mills patterns. And as with a lot of Merchant & Mills patterns, I always have to take a lot of fabric out of the shoulder. So usually on their patterns, the seam for the shoulder is like, it sits down here on me, whereas in reality I want it to be sitting right on the shoulder. So I took about 2 centimeters out, and not very well. At this point I was back home. I didn't have, I had my sewing basics with me, so I did a very poor job. But actually the sleeve insertion's all right. I did a kind of hack job, but it's fine, and I'm so happy with it. It's just a perfect comfy smock dress. It's got pockets, and yeah, I love the colour. So I'm super happy with my sewing. And I will be back in a bit to talk about some knitting books. Hello, I'm back after a quick break to stretch and grab a parcel and have a drink. So also the lighting slightly changed because, as previously mentioned, it gets very dark very quickly in here. So I have got a side light on, so sorry that the light's now slightly yellow. I do try to avoid using it. So yeah, let's get cracking. Before I move on to talk about the knitting books, I just wanted to quickly mention something that kind of relates to what I was just talking about with my Make 9. So one of my Make 9 plans is to make a quilted coat. If you follow the kind of same people that I follow who post sewing content, then you might have seen a lot of people making sewing or quilted jackets or coats last year. It was really popular, and I did make a quilted coat out of some quilted Merchant & Mills fabric last year. It was a gift from my family for Christmas. The fabric was all a gift because it's quite pricey, and it's like a pre-quilted cotton fabric, and I made what is now called, I can't remember what it's so the pattern company, Paper Cut Patterns, they renamed a lot of their patterns so that they were they were quite appropriative, can't say that word, names for the patterns. So they renamed them all, and I now cannot remember the renamed version. I'm sorry, I'll leave it linked down below. So I did make a quilted coat. I have to say I have not, it's such a shame, but I haven't worn it very much. Basically the design of the coat has a massive batwing sleeve, and there is so much, I think I made a size too big anyway. I didn't make a 12, which was my own fault. And I basically just, there is so much excess fabric kind of here that it's actually like, just, I don't think looks great, and it also just isn't actually that comfortable. So I really wanted, and it's also very, I think there's just something off about the proportions of the coat. I just don't really love wearing it. I have worn it occasionally. I wore it like once the other day, and so I do wear it, but I ideally maybe like to re-gift it, or like maybe cut it back up and use the fabric, basically because the fabric is, the way the kind of the design of it works is that it's like pieced, so there's not one like big section for the back. It's like cut on angles, which is a lovely design feature, but makes for reusing the fabric quite tricky. So I could maybe make some cushions out of it, or maybe some very expensive project bags, but I'm really, or maybe it just seems a shame to cut up the coat, so I don't know maybe whether I could re-gift it if someone else would like it. I just don't really know anyone in my life that would wear, that would want that size and would wear it. So I'm really not sure what to do with it, because I really want to pass it on to a better home, someone that will really enjoy wearing it. It's just, I don't love it on me. And also I still haven't sewn the bottom of the lining in, so I need to do that if I am going to re-gift it. Anyway, big ramble, big tangent. So I wanted to make a quilted jacket, and I'd already kind of planned my make 9, and I knew there were a few, I hadn't really decided on a pattern, but I thought, oh, maybe I could like make the fabric, so I could pre-quilt the fabric and use Liberty scraps, or some like scraps of linen, and make it like something really joyful that I definitely want to wear. And I'll toile it first, and I'll make a really conscious effort to not waste the money and time like I did last time on something I wouldn't wear. So yeah, this was all kind of like in my plan, and then I went into one of my local charity shops. It's an Oxfam, it's really close to where I live, and I usually just I think I was like needed to go, I was like picking something up or getting some food and from somewhere else, and I always just kind of pop in because I love a good charity shop. I just love them. I find I really enjoy that like rummaging and looking for like things. I just quite enjoy it. And I buy quite a lot of my clothes from charity shops, or like secondhand, because that's what I prefer to do if I can. It's like a massive privilege. So I just quite enjoy that element of it. I had found a Hornsey tea. I really want to start like collecting Hornsey pottery. It's very random. It's a very specific type of it was a British pottery company, and they were quite popular in the 70s, as I mentioned earlier. Really inspired by like the 70s and 60s fashion and everything. So yeah, I did like found a Hornsey teapot in there, like in the same charity shop a few weeks before, and I've bought like sewing patterns. I buy quite a lot of stuff in there actually. It's usually pretty good picks. And then I went in, and I think it was New Year's Eve, and I was buying I'd like gone somewhere else to buy some ingredients for some food I was making. I think I was making some like cake to take around to friends, and I found these quilts, and they are amazing. I was really unsure as to whether to buy them or not. So they are 2 single like bed covers, like quilts. So there's like the top is quilted, and then what would hang off is like a frill, but it's quite a long frill. I think that's maybe called a valance. They were it really reminds me of something maybe either of my grandmas would have had. They were really very like popularized by like Laura Ashley. They're very 80s. Yeah, they're quite frilly, and they're so beautiful though. And I think they might be handmade. I can't quite tell. I couldn't find a label, but this is the pattern. So yeah, these 2 quilted bed covers. And I feel very sacrilegious about this because I would normally not cut up a quilt, and I would want to use it as a quilt, but these are for 2 single beds. There's 2 of them, and that, yeah, both for single beds. And I have a double bed. I don't know anyone in my life that has single beds or uses them, and to be honest, I can never foresee myself having a single bed, for myself anyway. So to be honest, I just wouldn't use them as bed covers. And I love the fabric. I was kind of umming and ahhing. I think they were £25 for 2, so pretty good. I mean, I thought that was quite good price considering how much fabric you get, and it's pre-quilted. So I want to make a second quilted jacket. This is like very much folded up. So I'll try and unfold it. They're quite large. So you've got this single layer of fabric for the like frill that obviously goes down to like the floor from the bed. So as you can see, it is actually really quite a lot of fabric on that frill, maybe like over 50 centimeters wide, and it's really long because it goes around the whole edge of the bed. So it's a really good length of fabric, so I could definitely use that to make something else, or as part of the jacket. Maybe I could make the binding out of it, because I'd quite like to like bias bind all the seams, and like the edging. I think that would look really nice. So maybe I could do that actually, or because I was originally planning on, when I knew that I wanted to bind it, maybe picking out a colour, maybe the green, like kind of find something that matched this green colour or this pink colour. But actually using the binding made from the fabric could be quite nice. Anyway, so yeah, I just think this is so lovely, and they were in such good condition. They were in a plastic bag, like, so I always go to the sewing section. They've got like a small amount of like home furnishing fabrics and like sewing patterns, knitting magazines, and I always like to have quite a good rummage around there in like the home section, which is where I found my Hornsey teapot. And yeah, I just saw these and I was like, wow, this is great. And I like messaged my boyfriend, I messaged my mum, I was like, should I do this? And yeah, it was New Year's Eve, so it was just before I was going on this like month-long fabric and wool buying ban. And I was like, oh, should I buy them? I don't know. And I like said that how much they were and like obviously what they were. I was like, oh, do you think it's worth it? And they both were like, yeah, go for it. That was all the validation I needed. But yeah, oh, I'm so happy I bought them. And then I was talking to the lady in the Oxfam who was working there, and she was like, oh, these are really nice, like what are you going to do with them? And I was like, oh, I'm actually going to cut them up, I think, and make a jacket. And she also sewed. And yeah, so it was nice to have a little conversation with her about it, and she was like, oh, that's a great idea. So I thought she'd be really shocked and like, oh, you can't do that. They're perfectly usable as they are. So yeah, oh, I'm just really happy about it, and I'm really excited. I then did tell my boyfriend what I was planning to do, and he was a bit like, you're going to wear a whole quilted jacket? And then I was like, yeah, it'll be so cool. And he was like, but he knows I will, you know, I don't, to be honest, I dress for myself, and what I enjoy wearing, and he knows that, and he's cool with that. And yeah, I don't really dress for anyone else's approval, to be honest. So yeah, I'm gonna prove him wrong. And then I did say, maybe I should make a full suit. And he was like, oh god, what's she done? But yeah, no, I won't make a full suit, sorry. But yeah, I just love it, and I'll stop gushing on about it now because it's probably quite boring for all of you, but I just wanted to share that. And yeah, I would definitely say fabric. I don't think I've often bought fabric in shops before, just from like luck, but I definitely recommend if you're a sewer or a knitter, even looking in your local charity shops, if that's something you can do. You can find some really good things in there, especially in like certain like charity shops. If you know, there's some really nice ones near where I live, luckily, that tend to, they're quite they usually have some like nice stuff in there, so yeah, would really recommend. That was like I was going to say the highlight of my New Year's, but I had a really nice New Year's, thankfully. Managed to spend it outside. Me and my boyfriend and some of his friends went up, did like a midnight hike to the top of Cheddar Gorge, which is in the Mendips. It's like south of Bristol and Bath, and it was lovely. It was so nice. Yeah, I remember like watched the fireworks, and we had like a fire, and it was lovely. So yeah, that was the added bonus, was getting that fabric. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to share that. I'm not sure really what pattern to use yet. I don't know whether to maybe, I would say self-draft something, but I would have no clue where to start. So yeah, I'm not too sure about what pattern to use, but I've got a few ideas. So if anyone's got any advice or experience doing that, I'd really appreciate it. I think I'll have enough to make a jacket. I had a quick look at the measurements and it should be enough. If I don't, I will either keep them as is and find some use for them as bed covers, or I will make like a gilet, like a vest almost, instead, because I would still love one of those. So I just won't include sleeves. So yeah, that is that. I just quickly, before I talk about reading, I wanted to quickly talk about some of my favourite knitting books that I have actually purchased recently or been given. So when my family live in Bath, some of my family anyway, and I went just before Christmas, I popped into a Yarn Story, which is one of the wool shops in Bath. It's lovely. I've been in there a few times. The staff are always so lovely, so helpful, and they stock a really great selection of yarns, like a lot of Spin Cycle. They stock Brooklyn Tweed. I was originally looking for this shade of Brooklyn Tweed in there, and I couldn't find it. Then they actually don't stock it, because I was chatting to the guy that works there, which I'm not sure of his name, sorry, but we had a really lovely chat. And yeah, I've seen him on their Instagram before. He's lovely, and I mean, they're all lovely, but yeah, we had a really nice chat when I went in just before Christmas, and I was looking for this. They don't stock this colour, so I got that somewhere else, but I did make I bought some Mondeem yarn, which I don't really want to carry on sharing my acquisitions unless I've got like an upcoming, I do usually have a plan for what I've bought, but I just think it's nicer to share when I'm just about to make something. So that's kind of like an update on whether I'll be doing acquisitions in the future. But yeah, so I went in and I bought some Mondeem for some socks that I want to make later on this year, and I went in with the purpose of buying the Shetland Wool Adventures journal, and this is volume 3, so this is the most recent volume, and oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's a really lovely kind of, I would say this is more of a book, like the price point sets it as more of a book. It was £22, which is obviously, it's completely worth it. It's got some beautiful patterns in here, it's got some articles, it's got recipes, it's got walks you can do around Shetland, and it's a really beautifully produced magazine. I really love it, and I'd love to buy some of the other ones. I originally bought it for this pattern, and these are, sorry, the lighting's not great, so you probably might not be able to see, but these are the oyster gloves, and they are by Wilma Malcolmson. And I just really love them, and I would really like to knit myself a pair of gloves. And there's all the patterns in here are lovely, but yeah, I originally bought it just for the gloves, and then also this snood design, which is by Mary Fraser, and it's very like modern kind of graphic design. Yeah, sorry, maybe I'll insert a picture, but it's really beautiful. So yeah, I bought this, and I've been really into like Fair Isle Shetland knitting recently. It's always something I've really enjoyed doing since I began knitting, but it's something I really want to do more of in 2022, and it's just something I really enjoy the process of. I love knitting colour work. That Talvinen jumper that I knit for my mum really sparked something in me, I think. So I'd love to do some more Fair Isle knitting, like traditional Fair Isle knitting, as well as more modern interpretations. So yeah, this is lovely, and I'd really recommend checking it out if it sounds of interest. Carrying on with the Shetland theme, a few months ago I bought the aforementioned Shetland Trader Book 3 Heritage, which is by Gudrun Johnston, and I talked about this quite a lot earlier, but I just wanted to show you how beautiful it was. As soon as I saw kind of the initial designs, I knew that I wanted this, and it's published by Pom Pom Press. And all the designs are really inspired by Gudrun's own mother, who ran a company called the Shetland Trader, which sold knitwear in the Fair Isle design, and produced in Shetland, I believe. And the designs in this are so gorgeous. I think I want to knit everything in this book, but once I have done my headscarf, which is called the Sandnes, I would love to knit this jumper, which is the Vert pullover. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's so nice. It's got this colour work at the top, it's got balloon sleeves, it's got a turtleneck, it's got colour work here. Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, here you go. There's quite a few people knitting this at the moment. Amy Palco, the lovely Amy Palco, has just finished hers. I know Taylor Owen, who I mentioned earlier, she is knitting one, and I know Casey from Young Folks Knits is also planning to knit the black one. So yeah, I would really love to knit this. It's not on my make 9, but I would love to knit this one in 2022, and I just would really recommend checking out the patterns. I think they're quite modern interpretations, but there's still this like 70s aesthetic to them that I love. So yeah, I would really highly recommend checking out the designs in this if you haven't already. I know it's really been really popular. The other two books are lots older, and the first one is a book that my boyfriend's grandma actually gave me, and it's one that she's had for must be years, and she is a knitter. A lot of his family knit, and she thought I might like this, so she very kindly gave it to me, and it is the Calf Facet Glorious Knitting. I think that's how you pronounce it, and this was a Calf Facet, I think is, yeah, the pronunciation. He was a really popular knitwear designer in the 80s. I was mentioning this book to my mum and my aunt, and they were like, oh yeah, Calf Facet, like, was huge. So this book was initially published in let's see, 1985, and I have to say, this isn't usually like, the designs in this aren't really what I would usually go towards, but some of them are. I've never looked inside it. She just, my boyfriend was like visiting his family for Christmas, and he was like, oh, my grandma wants to give you this book, and I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, she'd like really love you to have it. And so it was kind of a surprise, and I hadn't looked through it before, but I know that Brooke from the, is it Brooke? I'm really sorry, I can't remember her name, but the host of the Brooke Willow podcast, she is knitting a coat from this book, and when I was looking through it, I was like, oh, I recognise that. And yeah, there are some really beautiful designs in it. They're very just really like, they kind of remind me a bit of like Stephen West, in that they're just very like unique and very striking. And yeah, I'm not sure if I would knit a lot from this, to be honest, but it's a beautiful book to own, and I'm so grateful that she gave it to me. It was really kind of her, and yeah, really unexpected. And there are a few things in here I'd like to knit, including, there's some really beautiful like sleeveless jackets in here. Like for instance, this is a jumper, but this is really lovely. I love all the colours. And yeah, there are some really cool pieces. They're really unusual, and yeah, I just think they look awesome. So I would love to knit some of them. I'm now trying to find a very specific piece that I can't find. But yeah, they're gorgeous, and I think he's so talented. And it was just a really lovely gift. I'm really grateful to her for giving it to me. Yeah, just really kind of her. So yeah, this is the like kind of gilet design with these like stars. This is the coat version. But yeah, it's beautiful, and yeah, thank you so much. I don't want to name her, and she's not watching, but it was a really lovely gift, so I'm really grateful for this. And yeah, maybe at some point that would be an amazing like long-term project to work on. The other book is another second-hand book that I found a few months ago in a charity shop near where I work, and I often like go out on my lunch break and try to get out of the office and have a bit of a walk if the weather's not too horrendous. This is when I was back in the office before obviously like the COVID surges, and so and there is an Oxfam bookshop near where I work, so I pop in quite a lot on my lunch break. Again, I'm just a massive sucker for charity shops, and I love buying books, and I love buying secondhand books, and I always go to the craft and like the cookery section as well, and I found this book, which is called The Country Diary Book of Knitting, and it's by Annette Mitchell, and I believe this is based off the Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, which was a really popular, yeah, from the best-selling The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, and it's inspired by that, and it was originally published in the 80s, I believe. Yeah, in 1987, and it just has some very 80s style knitwear, but it also has some really lovely, like very modern, I think, pieces. So for example, this, I'm sorry, I'm going to cover my mouth, but this beautiful like twin set, which I wouldn't wear as a twin set, but I'd knit either the cardigan or the jumper, and it looks like it's knit out of, it's like a mohair, like a lace weight yarn, and like with this beautiful lace pattern, and I actually think that looks really modern. So there was that, and there's some like really nice like very vintage children's patterns, which I thought was so cute. Would like definitely knit those for like friends, children, if any of my, or like, you know, any children that, or babies that come into my life. And yeah, there's this one, which is called the Mistletoe. Yeah, just some like really cute designs. Yeah, never heard of it before, but it was £4 in the charity shop, and I thought, I can't, like, I was looking through it and I was like, this is amazing. Even if I never knit anything from it, it's just got some nice illustrations. The one thing I will say is that the sizing is poor. It's really limited. It's like like a lot of the sizing isn't like the bust, what it lists as the bust size. I think the max for a lot of them is like 100, 105 maybe, which is I just about fit into. So yeah, really limited sizing, which again is probably why I wouldn't knit much for myself out of it, because I don't fit into it, and also I don't want to, you know, I'd like to knit things that have inclusive sizing if possible. But it's, yeah, would really recommend having a look at some of the patterns online if you can, because they're really cool, and yeah, just it's got some lovely illustrations in it, and yeah, it's too nice to pass up. So yeah, those are just the quick little chat that I wanted to have about knitting books. And yeah, if thank you so much for joining me. It was lovely to have you. I'm going to quickly talk about books that I've been reading myself, fiction but non-fiction books, and I'm also going to give some podcast recommendations. So yeah, shouldn't be too much longer. I'm aware this has been a really long episode, so I'm sorry. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I think it's just been too long and I need to do these more regularly. So yeah, over Christmas and the New Year, I finished 2 books. I finished a book by Nicola Upson, which is a kind of crazy crime mystery book. It was really good. I'd really recommend it. It's about the author Josephine Tey, who was a really famous crime writer in the 30s and 40s. It focuses on her as the main character, and I really enjoyed it. It was an old book I picked up in a charity shop, but they're quite new, but I picked it up a few years ago and I finally got around to reading it and it was great. So I'd really recommend that. I'll include a picture on here if I haven't already, because I've now lent it to my mum, who also really enjoys mystery and crime novels. So that was like a nice quick read. And then I read one of my Persephone books that I hadn't read already, which is One Woman's Year by Stella Martin-Curie. I've spoken about Persephone before, but they are an independent publisher who publish mostly women's writing from the 20th century, namely like the 30s and 40s. And I love their work. I've been a really big fan of theirs for years. And when I last went in, this is one of their more recent books. And this book is it's a non-fiction book, and it's by Stella Martin-Curie, who is the writer, and she was married to a writer as well, and it's really a month by month kind of anthology of lots of different things. So there's a little essay each month about maybe something that's happened in her life or something related to the month, so maybe like Christmas or Halloween, less so Halloween, like say Guy Fawkes, or like a seasonal activity that they've done as a family. There is like recipes. She talks a lot about cooking and food. There's like a little anthology section where she includes snippets from other literature, so either from the time or there's some snippets from like Austen. But what really drew me to this is the beautiful wood carving illustrations. So I don't want to really show you the content, but yeah, this is one of the illustrations. So there's these beautiful wood carvings at the beginning of each month, and they're gorgeous. I love them, and they're like throughout the book. And yeah, if this sounds like something you'd enjoy, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It was the first book I finished in 2022, and it was so lovely, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's just very charming. Obviously there's not really a plot line, but it's just a really lovely book to read before bed. Yeah, and I really would highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars. I want to recommend it to everyone. I think it's just really lovely, and a really nice like historical insight. It was written in the early 50s, so rationing was not too much of a distant memory, and yeah, it's just a really nice insight into life in that time for this woman, and yeah, would really recommend. So the current book I'm reading is one I picked up when I was at home over Christmas. I went into town, and it is Dear Mrs. Bird by A.J. Pierce. I've wanted to read this for ages, but I try not to buy too many books because I just don't read quick enough to get through them all. And this is about a woman who wants to be a journalist. She wants to be a war correspondent in the 1940s, and she's a young woman, and she wants to become this war correspondent, and she finds a new job at what she thinks is a newspaper, but in fact it's actually the Women's Weekly magazine that is published by the same publishing company, and she becomes the kind of secretary and typer for the agony aunt at that magazine. And this agony aunt, who is called Mrs. Bird, doesn't really want to answer anything that's vaguely unpleasant, so anything involving marriage or love or any like unpleasant topics. She's quite Victorian in her attitudes, so the main character, Emmeline, decides to answer these people herself. and the story kind of goes from there. And it's just, I'm really enjoying it. It's very like charming and fun, and yeah, a nice bit of, I really enjoy fiction like set around this time, and yeah, I'm just enjoying it so much. And yeah, I'm about halfway through, so yeah, we'll hopefully finish this by my next podcast and can give you a full recommendation. But yeah, at the moment I'm just really enjoying it, and it's really just quite an easy read. It's one of those books which you get into and you just want to keep reading it, which is exactly the kind of thing I need. So yeah, that's it for books. And I just quickly wanted to talk for a few minutes about 2 podcasts that I would love to recommend. They are both people that I followed. One I followed for a really long time, and one is very recent discovery. And they both mainly talk about knitting, but they also talk, what I love is that they talk about other crafts. And as someone that's kind of a multi-crafter myself, obviously I sew and I dabble in other things, it's really nice to hear about what other people are doing. And especially like they talk about both of them talk about like nature, and it's just, they're both beautiful podcasts that I really recommend. So the first is Ophelia from Orchid's Heart. I mentioned her a few times already today, and she mainly talks about knitting and sewing, but she also talks about other things, and I really love her aesthetic, and I think she's so skilled, and I love everything she makes. And she's got such a nice podcast. Like, I find her very I'm sure you might already follow her. She's got a really beautiful aesthetic and I really love following her. She also is a massive fan of Merchant and Mills. So yeah, she talks also about like making her own body care and stuff, which has really inspired me. And yeah, I love her podcast, so I'd really recommend going and checking her out. And then the other person I would recommend is Alex Juliet from the Ancestral Craft podcast. She has only done 1 episode, but oh my gosh, it was so lovely. I found her about a month ago, and yeah, she just seems like they both just seem like such lovely humans. And yeah, I really loved Alex's podcast. She's a gardener, so she talks about like herbalism and like plants, and she talks a lot about that side of things, which I find really interesting as someone that's quite new but interested in gardening myself. And yeah, just really lovely. She talks about spinning, which is again something I'd like to try. And I find both of their podcasts really inspiring. I'm so looking forward to Alex doing another episode, and also watching Ophelia's next episode when she uploads one. So yeah, they're just 2 people that talk, if you're interested in things, as obviously they may majoritively talk about knitting, but if you are interested in other crafts or like natural dyeing, they talk about that, and it's really lovely. And yeah, I can't recommend them highly enough. So thank you so much for watching this Mammoth episode. I'm sorry about the lighting. This is just a constant battle in winter. So sorry, it is going to be ongoing. I've tried my best to look in the camera. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know how you are. I hope you're all well. And I hope you all had a lovely festive season, as I said at the beginning. Let me know what you're working on. I would absolutely love to hear if you've got any goals for 2022 in terms of what you make. Please let me know down below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.